Hey, Journey family and friends, Pastor John here with this week's Midweek Conversation, joined as always by Pastor Dustin Agard.
Yes, sir. Good to be here. Good to see you. Good to have you as well. And we got a special guest, Pastor John.
Yes, we do. We have a very special guest that we're very happy to introduce you to today, although she's certainly no stranger to Journey. This is Shelly Smelski.
Well, hi everyone. I'm so delighted to be here and delighted to be with Pastor John and Pastor Dustin.
Well, we're excited to have you, and I'm excited for them to get to know who you and your heart is all about. So I'm excited. This is going to be good.
Yeah, very good. Steve and Shelly came to Journey how many years ago? 6 years ago? 7 years ago?
Somewhere in the neighborhood? I want to say 5 or 6 years ago.
5 or 6 years ago, right, exactly. You were a part of a small church plant that Pastor Harvey Carpenter was leading at the time, and then when Harvey joined the Journey staff, you and Steve came here, and then we quickly got to know your story a little bit, which is a story of grief.
Yes.
In many ways. So you want to share just a little bit about that?
Sure. I'm super grateful to Journey because we were adopted. They called us adopted into the family here at Journey, and what a beautiful adoption that was. But yes, we came to know Pastor Harvey because of the death of our 11-year-old son, Jordan. He died as a result of being on vacation and swimming in fresh water, whereby the water went up his nose and he became infected with what they call an amoeba, or people would know as a parasite.
Yeah.
So that's how we got to know our Journey family, and my goodness, so many of you have carried us on some of our deepest, darkest days, and we are grateful to our family here. It's a beautiful family, and one of the main reasons why I'm so excited to be able to be a part of the Journey family, even in a greater capacity.
Well, you know, part of when you have a horrific loss like you and Steve had, God always does something in that, and part of it is He changes your heart for people and other people going through that. So since then, you've started the Jordan Smelski Foundation and helped other families that have faced similar situations. Dustin and I have played in a few of your golf fundraisers.
Let me just
Our golf's not very good in those fundraisers,
Let me just tell you
Shelly.
this. When we had the opportunity to play golf for the foundation, I thought, man, we know people. We're going to place high. We know people. We've never placed high, Pastor John. It doesn't matter who you know.
It has a little bit to do with our game,
It doesn't
Dustin.
matter who you know.
Yeah.
We didn't place high. And you said something, Pastor John, and you said, you know, when you go through something, it changes your heart. And I think when God changes your heart, sometimes He changes your calling.
He does, absolutely.
And that's part of your story, too, on how you've got to this point, is it wasn't just your heart for a season, but then a calling, and it's reshaped and reshifted your lives and ministry, and there are so many people better for it, and we're grateful for that.
So tell them, Shelly, professionally, what you've been doing up to this point.
Yeah, so because I think that was beautifully said by Pastor Dustin. So I've spent 20 plus, I won't say quite how many, 20 plus years in technology. I started out in the technical realm in technology and then moved to sales, where I just continued because I just loved it. I thrived on being around people and being able to provide, you know, a service to them that I thought would benefit them. So
20 years in technology, I can't imagine a more different time of 20 years in technology. When you just think about, just think about the changes in the past 20 years. Sorry to interrupt, but I just was processing that for you to just keep up year after year and the amount of things that have shifted. So sorry, keep going.
No, but I think it's such a great point, because when you think about what happened to us when we all shut down in COVID,
right.
I had at the time been working for Cisco, and so we were used to working at home. A lot of us had our own personal offices. We were used to using our technology for meetings and conferences, and so all of a sudden the rest of the world had to kind of jump on board to that technology bandwagon, and so it has really kept people minimally connected. It's not the same as being here in person with one another, but it has been able to keep people connected, and so I think it's been amazing to be able to leverage the technology for that exact purpose.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You know, Steve and Shelly have been serving at Journey for several years now through our Griefshare ministry. And this past week's message, and by the way, if you haven't seen this past week's message, I encourage you to go to the link that you see right now and just hop on and watch that. We talked about community, connecting in community, why that's so important. It's such an important part of our spiritual growth. We need other people in our life. Other people need us. But
with practical ways on how to jump in.
Absolutely.
And so not just inspirational, which was great, but there's some very practical ways on how to jump into that.
Griefshare is one of those groups.
Yeah.
Yes.
One of those support groups, and you and Steve have led that here. I'd say 5 years now.
Yeah, we've led it for quite a few years.
Yeah.
But Pastor John, I want to just read something that you said
All
from
right.
the service today because it was so impactful for me.
All right.
And I really encourage anybody who didn't see the service this weekend to go out and watch it. But you talked about fellowship and how important fellowship is, and you said fellowship requires authenticity.
Yeah.
And boy, does it ever. But this is what you said in a short paragraph, and it was impactful. So I just want to read it to everybody, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
You said, people were so gripped by the good news that Jesus gives grace and forgiveness that when they came together and ate, they came out of hiding. Mm-hmm. It said they got real about their struggles and their temptation and their sin. And here's the truth about me, and this comes from C.S. Lewis, and I love C.S. Lewis. But he puts it this way, and this is how you put it. It is at that moment when someone else says, you too. And it goes on to say, the bonds of fellowship are formed. Authentic Christian fellowship is where who we are on the outside is the same as who we are on the inside.
Amen.
And when you go through
Amen.
grief,
Yeah.
and when you're willing to come out and say, I'm struggling and I'm hurting, right? We as Christians, we think we're supposed to just get through everything. We just lift our hearts and our hurts up to God and we can just get through it. And there's time in our lives when it gets so dark that we need the help and fellowship of others.
Amen.
And so I just loved how that was said.
That's one of the things
this
I think I
weekend.
love about our recovery groups, Jaya, any of those ministries, they almost have a step ahead of everybody else, and they realize that being real is so much more impactful in their lives, that they don't have room to fake it anymore. And there's so much church that takes place in those groups and in Griefshare and anywhere that you could take off a mask.
Yes.
Because of that phrase, oh, you're struggling with that too?
You too.
And we all are.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I have found that when you're hurting like that, you don't have the energy to uphold a facade.
That's right.
You don't have the emotional, sometimes the physical, but you don't have the emotional energy to perpetuate pretense.
Yeah.
And you're just raw.
Yes.
And I think that's particularly true with grief. It's certainly true when you're dealing with addiction. The pain of divorce, that's
Yes.
another group that's starting here on Thursday night. Divorce care that's starting here. So I think that, and let me just speak to a little bit of what I spoke to this past week. Melinda and I went through a period of about 13 months where we lost 4 family members. And, first was my dad, then her brother committed suicide, and then my brother died from cirrhosis of the liver, and then her mom died. And any one of those deaths would have been probably enough to cause us to go through Griefshare. And I remember Steve coming to me, and maybe even you, Shelly, saying, hey, we have Griefshare after the first 1 or 2 deaths. And I said, well, not right now. And after that 4th death, I just told Melinda, I said, you know what? I'm going to go to Griefshare. I don't know if you're going to go or not, because I didn't know where she was, I said, but I need to go through Griefshare myself. And so she and I both went through Griefshare. And what a help that was to be, because every week as you introduce people and they talk about their loss and new people come in and you hear their loss, and then you get in a small group after the kind of big group time and you hear a focused teaching on some aspect of grief recovery, and then you just share in those groups. And we go through a lot of tissues
Yes, we
in
do.
Griefshare, don't we?
Wow.
The tissue budget is high for Griefshare because there's just a lot of hurt that we go through.
Well, I was so glad that you attended, Pastor John, because I know for pastors, it's hard to not show the congregation your strength and I'm here to lead. But in life sometimes we just need to go to God with our hurt and be able to say, I have faith in these programs that we have brought into the church that I see are changing lives and helping people every day. And I too want to be a part of that when it's impacting my life. So I'm so glad you came and attended.
Well, and one of the things that we know is happening right now with the COVID surge and how pervasive it seems to be in our area. I know today our staff just felt the heaviness of people. We learned of another one of our members that passed just today. They'd been on a ventilator for some time. We still have some people that are fighting for their lives right now. People that are recovered, there's still a road to recovery to go here themselves. And so as we kind of hit the peak of this, at least here in Central Florida, and the hospitalizations and the deaths that are going to happen, on the backside of this, there's going to be a lot of emotional damage, mental health damage that's been done. And so part of what Shelly has come on staff, and if happy to announce that now, Shelly is a part of our Journey staff. She's working as our director of community care here at Journey. We'll unpack that a little bit more in just a moment.
Which we're so excited to have Shelly on the team, and just
but so timely.
As you could just see, just in these moments, just a tender heart to serve and to help, but she's got a leadership edge, and what a great combination to be able to lead, to serve the community in a variety of ways. Because this is hard, and not only are people passing away, but because it's COVID, the loved ones can't visit them in the hospital. So we're seeing people go weeks without the most time people are needed, they're all alone. And what that's gonna do to our mental toll is gonna be very hard. And so we want to be right there with them, along with them, and to be able to serve them every step of the way.
And Shelly, you know more because you've studied and prepared, and you've taken some courses to get better prepared to be certified on that, and that's so helpful. But the statistics of what could happen over the next 2 years, scary. From an emotional viewpoint and a mental health.
It's already scary. So even before COVID,
you're right.
Pastor Dustin, you bring up such a good point about isolation. When you think about what has happened to people through this time, a lot of people have had to isolate. And I think of just some of the members that have come through Griefshare. We have, some folks who have lost their spouses. And we had a beautiful woman who lost her husband. She was married for 59 years, and now she's all alone and had to go through COVID all alone. So that isolation is really hurting people. But there's so much. When you look at the statistics, it's really frightening. So 1 in 5 people today are struggling with some sort of mental health illness, and that could be anxiety. And anxiety and depression go hand in hand. And there's right now over 40 million people dealing with anxiety. And I remember after Jordan's death, that was really impactful for me. I had so much anxiety, so much depression. And the anxiety was so bad that the first time in my life, I had panic attacks. I didn't even know what a panic attack was. And those are super frightening.
Yes, they are.
So I was dealing with all these things that were hitting me, and I was still very faithful in my belief in Christ, but I had to do something to get more help. And it was really Griefshare that I felt like saved my life, because it gave me the tools. And it gave me the sense of community and being with other people who could say, me too, and I'm hurting, and I'm here for you, and I'm gonna walk alongside you. And so that's why I wanna do what I'm doing, because so many people stepped out to help me.
And Shelly, for those that don't know you, you are a strong woman. Like you have a love for the Lord, and you're strong. And so I'm just processing the person out there that's like, no, I know I have pain, but I'm strong. I can get through this on my own. And I just want to speak to you. She's strong. We know all kinds of strong people. It doesn't matter. The way that we're made in the image of God is we need people. We need to be fully known and fully loved. And that only happens through groups like this in the valley not just the mountaintops. And so grateful to see how God's carried you in and through that.
Yeah, thank you. I couldn't have said it better because I was so in that valley. And it was so hard to just try to pick myself up and figure out how was I going to move forward. And with grief, you never really get over grief.
No.
And I'm sure, Pastor John, with all the grief you went through, you don't really go over it, you go through it.
Yeah.
And with any kind of mental illness that we're dealing with, it doesn't have to stay with us forever. Yeah. By the grace of God, I don't have panic attacks anymore. But if we go through it, if we deal with it, if we're not embarrassed or ashamed, too many times shame brings us to the point where we don't want to deal with these issues, right? And so you see right now 1 in 5 people struggling with a mental health issue, 1 in 20 with serious mental health issues. You see depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and the stats were so bad pre-COVID. We haven't even seen any numbers post-COVID. Yeah. So that's where they're talking, where you referred to Pastor John.
Addictions come into play too, is now I need an outlet, an easy outlet to make me feel better. And so I get to this, and now I have this mental struggle and now an addiction that seems almost impossible to get out of.
And the 3 major support groups that we have right now, think about that. Addiction. Yes. Journey to Christian Recovery, And tell us when that meets, Shelly.
Those meet on Thursday nights. Now, it's my understanding the ladies group is still online, but the men's group is back in person. But all of that can be found on our website. Yes, so if you're interested in any of those groups.
Go to the link that you saw here or see here about journeychristian.com support groups. It would be the way to find out about that. But marriage difficulties. Because of the isolation or the being together in relationships where they weren't healthy, and the numbers of divorce. So divorce care, and that starts this Thursday night, right?
6:30.
Yeah, 6:30 this Thursday night. We're excited about that. Getting that going just to help people in nothing worse than death, but really a close second's divorce. The loss that you feel in that. And then Griefshare. And Griefshare has been going on. We started a couple weeks ago, right?
Yes, we're about into the 4th session of Griefshare. And you bring up a super important topic because grief reveals itself in many ways, right? Grief is not just the loss of someone, it can be the loss of something. So I just want to clarify, because we can have the loss of a job, and that's the loss of, something. Grief to me is the loss of something we value, and value being the key word. So I just want everyone to know that Griefshare is specifically for the loss of someone.
Someone, very good point. Okay. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. It's a loss of someone, but there's grief in a lot of different ways.
That's right.
Because our life changes as a result of it. The people that right now it's all online. Griefshare is right now, and you and Steve have done a couple of cool things during this online period. At the very end, I know you have a meal or have a meal normally where people are able to get together. And when Melinda and I went through it, we had a meal and people brought a picture of their loved one. They were grieving and shared a little bit about it, which was cool. We can't do that in the quarantine and the lockdown. So you did that online, but you had pizza delivered.
Yeah, I have to give Steve full credit for that.
Yeah, Steve did a great job on that.
Because he figured out how to get the order. And we even delivered pizza to like Canada.
I was going to say, this wasn't people just in a Popco.
No.
They coordinated, I think it was
countries.
Yeah, it was a couple countries and several states. And I just thought what a extra mile with a smile type mentality, as we say about around here.
And being creative.
Absolutely.
About how to meet needs and serve. I just thought that was great.
Let's share a meal
Steve,
together.
Great job on that, brother. That was really good.
That was great.
Yeah.
And Pastor Dustin, you said something I think is important. When we're going through a lot of personal issues, we can tend to want to numb our pain. And that's where we see addiction soaring. So instead of charging full force into our pain and our issues and dealing with them, we tend to want to numb them. So that's where we're seeing the rise.
And I've heard a stat recently that said that 1 in 3 people in America are addicted to something. 1 in 3, either a pill, either to gambling, either to porn. I mean, the variety of addictions are so vast. And so 1 in 3 is a massive amount. And so that is climbing again to numb the pain that we didn't get healthy in the first place.
Yes. And when you think about suicide, because suicide can go hand in hand with shame, right?
Absolutely.
When you just feel like ashamed of what you've done, that's why we have to let people come and get their guilt out so they don't have to feel shame. But when you think about suicide rates, globally, there's over 700,000 deaths a year that take place due to suicide. That's a person dying every 40 seconds. Think about that. Someone dying every 40 seconds from suicide. So, those kinds of stats, we just know that
which is where people feel hopelessness.
They feel
and
hopeless.
so what this is about is delivering hope through a variety of means. And it's hope in Christ and hope through the support and the healing. And so it's one of the things I really love about it. And Pastor John, we got good news, bad news for our audience.
All right.
Okay? Good news, bad news is everybody listening, you're a little bit messed up. That might be the good news. The bad news is, so is this guy, and so am I. And so Pastor John and I, we're very aware that this is not something that's for them. This is something that's for us. We talk openly about our need for counseling. You have a counselor. I have a counselor. I just met with my counselor last week. It's ongoing, and we're a work in progress. And so we want to be healthy, and we want you to be healthy. And so we're very open. And I say that because sometimes in the Christian world, there can be this stigma with this conversation. And we want to do whatever it takes to live a John 10:10 life where we can live life to the full in Christ Jesus. And we need our brothers and sisters. We need help. We need healing. We need coaching. We need counseling, all the above.
Yeah, before we wrap up, let's talk a little bit about the coaching aspect, Shelly, that you would like to see develop here. So this is more aspirational now, but I do think it's a great vision to move toward. So tell us a little bit about the coaching that you hope to see.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we have obviously the support groups, but I'm building a whole new ministry by your and with your blessings. So we are developing what we're calling life coaches, and they're going through a very strict curriculum which will help them to help people with addictions and people struggling with mental health issues. And really, we want to allow the congregation as well as the community to be able to come in and to be able to sit down with one of these coaches and to have them sit down and kind of triage a care plan or program with them so that they can be cared for along the path, because in mental health, what happens is there is no real care continuum.
Right.
And you guys may be very familiar with this. The family deals with the person that's having the issue, and then maybe they go into the hospital or they Baker Act, and then they're back to the family. So there really is no continuum of care like you see in like the medical community, where you can go to a walk-in clinic, then you can go to a specialist, then you can go to the hospital. So we want to build that kind of care continuum.
That's a good way to put it. That's really helpful.
Yeah, and a referral system on the back end. So we're coaches, we're not counselors. So we're not going to be here to coach, or counsel people. We're going to be here to coach people. And so we will have a strong referral program so that we can refer people.
And the difference of that is we're not clinically sanctioned counselors.
That's right.
So people might say, what's the difference between counseling and coaching? Is coaching is advice that we can get because we've been there, we understand things. We're not licensed counselors.
That's right.
And that's not what we're offering, but anything up to that point, we want to be able to help point a way. And so we're grateful for that.
I would say if you're interested in this ministry that Shelly's talked about, I'd like to know more about it. Her contact info is right here. I know she'd love to hear from you, and just or if you're hurting, if you need some help. And I think you'll find Shelly a very compassionate person to receive you and hear you. So if you need some help, her contact info is right here. You can email her, and I'm sure she'd respond to that. But boy, what a great place to be in right now in terms of developing this. Knowing what's coming, knowing that there's a big tsunami of mental health crisis coming, and we're already in and seeing that, for Journey to be preparing for that. So thank you, Shelly, for stepping out and having the heart for that, having the vision for that. Met with you and Steve, and you said, Pastor John, I think this is what we should do. And I said, I do too. And having Shelly the Lord just kind of dropped her in our lap here, so to speak. We're so grateful for her background, her leadership background, everything, but the life experience, and that's something that we share. And you don't have to have a licensed counselor to have someone share their life and to walk with you in life. You don't have to have that. Sometimes we need that.
Yes.
But and this is 2 Corinthians chapter 1. The comfort we have received when we needed comfort, we turn around and comfort others with. Now that's the Hampton translation. That's not exactly how Paul put it out there, but that's how I would say it. What the hurts we've been through, God comforts us, and we in turn take that comfort and we seek to comfort others. And that's at the heart of what you're trying to do.
Exactly.
All right, and here's the deal. The numbers are 1 and 3 and 1 and 5 that we kind of listed. That means maybe you're not identifying with this, but there's somebody that you could share this with. And so we want to encourage you, maybe you need to pass this along to a friend, a family, a loved one that we can come alongside, serve, or maybe they want to jump in on the leadership side and help be a coach. Would you be kind, and would you pass that along to whoever might need this?
Well, here's what this conversation tells me. We need another one. We need to do this again because there's so much we could talk about. We just introduced some things. Shelly, we'll have you back and we'll talk more, and you can kind of update us about the progress of the work and the ministry that you're leading here. But please know those support groups are there: Griefshare, Divorce Care, Journey to Christian Recovery. Reach out to Shelly. Just love to be that community that's authentic. Which means we deal with messes, our own included, but it's committed. And that's the second thing I shared this past week. We've got to be committed. You're devoted to something. As you commit to coming, to being a part of a group, that's where God is at work. It's in that commitment as well. This week, we're going to be sharing the next step of serving others humbly. Our brother, Pastor Dustin, is going to be sharing that message. I'm looking forward to that. I'm actually going to be out at Lake County, and I'm looking forward to visiting with our congregation at Lake County this Sunday. Pastor Dustin's going to be preaching here. Join us online at 9:30 or 11:15 or on site at Apopka or Lake County this Sunday. Thank you for joining us for this week's Midweek Conversation. Shelly, thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Shelly.
Yeah, as always, we are loving the journey.